Thank you, Demi and Deborah, for reading so well. Please, could you turn back to Psalm 91 and keep Psalm 91 open in front of you? And the aim this morning as we come to this incredibly beautiful and precious and famous psalm is just this deep personal conviction for each of us that there is a sovereign Lord. There is one who is most high, and that in him and in him alone, security is to be found. Corrie ten Boom, you've probably heard the story. She was a Dutch lady who was arrested in the Second World War for hiding Jewish people from the Nazis. And together with her sister Betsy, they were thrown into Ravensbrück concentration camp. And later she writes how Psalm 91 became to her great source of peace and comfort. The gods were real, the camp was real, death was real, but so were these very beautiful and precious promises of this psalm. I've put on the screen here a list of the top 10 everyday worries and anxieties, according to the Daily Mail, okay, so it must be right. But I guess in Oakwood, you can add a whole load of other things to a list like that. The fear of getting things wrong, the fear of loss, the fear of bereavement, the fear of what people think of me, the fear of what I look like, the fear of failure. The list goes on. And we haven't even yet, have we, got to the very real fears of this psalm. I don't know whether you can relate to any of these things if you look down. Verse 3, if you have a look. Fear of the fowler's snare. That's the trap that tries to unexpectedly catch the bird. Perhaps the person out to wrong me or harm me or hurt me, the person that's out to get me. Where do you find help and security when people are out to get you? Or have a look again at verse 3. Can you see their fear of the deadly pestilence? I guess that doesn't just have to include coronavirus, but sickness, illness, heart disease, the fear of having cancer on my medical notes, the fear of old age, the fear of the operation. Where do you find help and security when you get bad news from the doctor? Or have a look at verse 5 there, the terror of the night. Maybe the things that keep us awake at night as we toss and turn in our sleep. The things that worry me as I'm staring at the ceiling. Where do I find help and security in the face of our worries and anxieties? Then in 7 and 8, not just the fears of this life, notice, but the fear of what happens beyond this life. The fear of facing God in judgment unforgiven. Can there be any more fearful thing than that? Or verse 13, the fear of evil. And according to Jesus, who quotes verse 13 to his disciples, verse 13, according to Jesus, is all about the evil one. He's the one who prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. He's the crafty serpent who seeks to lead the world astray. Will I keep going as a Christian? Will I be caused to doubt? Where do you find fear, peace and security when all the spiritual forces of evil are arrayed against me? Lots of fears in our world. And so the question we're asking this morning is, who's on the other end of the phone? When you've got a problem, who do you call? And the answer in Psalm 91 is the sovereign Lord who is most high. He is the only place of security and protection. Two things this morning as we just continue our little series looking at some of these Psalms in Book 4 of the Old Testament songbook of God's people. And here's the first thing, point 1, the sovereign Lord, he is the only true place of safety. In sentences 1 and 2, we meet the one who finds refuge in the Almighty, and we meet a faithful and trusting and obedient individual who has a deep personal trust in the Lord. You see what he says? Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. A few years ago, I had a friend come and visit from Malaysia, and we didn't plan it. It just happened this way, walking along the street, and instinctively, he walks to the side of the street in the shade, because he's from a hot country and he needs to stay cool, whereas I'm English, and so I head to the side of the street where the sun's beaming down, because I'm always freezing. And the point is that the psalmist, he is much more, can you see, Malaysian than English? He lives in a hot country, writing from a hot country. And so when he talks about resting in the shadow of the Almighty, think of the place of protection from the sun. The Lord, he is like a protective shadow, the only place of protection from the heat of life. Can you imagine walking through life without a protective shadow? Can you imagine that? Or have a look at verse 2. The Lord is a refuge, a safe place. Pretty much my favourite thing to do in the world, that's one of my photos, is go hiking in Scotland. I remember once being up on the hills, caught out in a thunderstorm, very scary, very dangerous, and so we drop off the hill to a little bothy, a little mountain refuge that looked a little bit like that. And the psalmist, can you see, he says that the Lord is a refuge. He is the place of security in the storms of life. Can you imagine walking through life without a refuge? Or verse 2, the imagery changes again, doesn't it, to a fortress. He is the place of protection against the dangers and the threats of life. Have you been to a castle or a fortress recently? Were the walls big, strong and thick, or were they thin and flimsy and lightweight? How safe does the English knight feel in his castle? Very safe. How strong are the walls? Very strong. And the psalmist says that the Lord is a fortress. Can you imagine walking through life without a fortress? Can you imagine that? Or just have a look at the imagery of sentence 4 there. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. It's one of the things, isn't it, about birds? They love to defend their young. There's a story, I'm sure it's not true, but there's a story about a ranger in the Yellowstone National Park over in the States. Big forest fire. At the end of the fire, the ranger goes up the hill to assess the damage and comes across the carcass of a bird, knocks it over with his stick, and out comes these little chicks. And I'm sure the story's not true, but verse 4, the Lord is the place of protection and care, like a mother bird gathering up her chicks under the safety of her wings. The heavenly parent who wants to keep you very close. Then in 5 and 6, can you see there's a kind of escalation in the language from night and day, if you look down in sentence 5, to the language of darkness, so intense night now in sentence 6, and midday, fierce daylight. And the point is that if even the forces of intense darkness, fierce heat, that try to stalk and destroy, if even those forces can't harm me, well, there is nothing to fear. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. In verse 8, I guess a lot of the affliction in our world is caused by other people, those who want to hurt and harm, those who have done me wrong. But one day, sentence 8, all wrongs put right, and you will see the punishment of the wicked. Then in sentence 9, can you see that we get this word again, dwelling? It's the same word we had last week in Psalm 90. So even though we are transient and we are fleeting and we are fragile, there is a foundation that never crumbles. And the cries and the pleas of God's people in Psalm 90 are now wonderfully answered in Psalm 91. We may pass very quickly, here 1 minute, gone the next, but there is a place that I can live, a dwelling place that truly lasts. And then can you see 14 to 16, we get the direct voice of God himself putting a seal on all of this. And we might as well be honest with one another as you look at sentence 14. Sometimes I love God, sometimes I don't love God. Sometimes I trust him, sometimes I don't trust him. But in sentence 14, we meet one who always perfectly clings to the Lord in love and who always perfectly trusts the Lord. And to this one obedient, faithful man, and by extension to everyone who is in him, united to him, there is comprehensive rescue and there is comprehensive salvation. No wonder Psalm 91 has been called the kind of foxhole psalm. No wonder Psalm 91 is the soldier's favourite psalm. There was one army chaplain I was reading this week, so this is the most requested psalm by soldiers heading into combat. This is why Corrie ten Boom could say she was at home even in the concentration camp. Because even though her earthly shelter taken away, her heavenly shelter endures. Here is comfort in times of bereavement. Here is consolation in times of loss. Here is protection in the midst of affliction. The sovereign Lord is the only true place of safety, all of which takes us to point 2 and the question, is it true? It's the kind of nagging question, isn't it, that kind of hangs over a psalm like this. Do Christians always just walk around in a protective bubble? Hang on a minute, didn't Corrie's sister Betsy, didn't she actually die in the concentration camp? Is it right that Christians will never fall over? Is this psalm, basically, is it a nice thought? You know, a bit of placebo on a Sunday morning, but actually it's not real in real life. And so last few minutes, I'd love to talk about a right and a wrong way to understand Psalm 91. And I want to start by talking about the wrong way to understand Psalm 91, which is the way that Satan reads Psalm 91, all of which takes us, of course, to our New Testament reading. So could you come with me forward to page 967? Maybe keep a finger in Psalm 91. We're coming back there. Page 967. Matthew chapter 4. 967. And I am going to read from verse 5. Then the devil took him to the holy city and set him on the highest point of the temple. If you are the Son of God, he said, throw yourself down, for it is written, Psalm 91, he will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. Okay, so we're in the wilderness, and we're with this one faithful, obedient, trusting man. And along comes the evil one. And just by the by, it is very interesting, isn't it, that Satan thinks that Psalm 91 is addressed to Jesus. He thinks it's a promise for Jesus. And we wouldn't normally say this at St. Thomas's on a Sunday morning, but Satan is not wrong. He's right. Here is a promise for Jesus. He is the obedient, faithful, trusting man of Psalm 91. But can you see that the way that Satan tries to tempt Jesus is by taking the promise, this amazing promise, and twisting it and hijacking it and saying that nothing, no harm will ever come to the godly person, and particularly to the most godly person who has ever lived. You know, climb up the church spire this morning, chuck yourself off, God will catch you, nothing bad will ever happen to the believer. But Jesus disagrees. Look down, Jesus disagrees. He thinks that understanding of Psalm 91 is wrong. In fact, he thinks that understanding of Psalm 91 is satanic, and he says you should not put the Lord your God to the test. All of which takes us to the right way to understand Psalm 91. And to understand the right way to read Psalm 91, let me tell you the story of Elizabeth Elliot. She was the wife of Jim Elliot. And this is really kind of stirring stuff. Jim Elliot, American hero, American college student, well-known sports person, with everything ahead of him, glittering career ahead of him. He turns his back on all of that to devote his life to reaching the Orca tribe with the message of Jesus. Two problems with that. The first was that the Orca tribe was very remote, and so he got around that problem by flying tiny little planes into the jungle. Second problem was that the Orca tribe had a reputation for unpredictable acts of violence. And they got around that problem. Well, they didn't get around that problem. People pleaded with them not to go, but they went anyway, and Jim Elliot lost his life seeking to take the message of Jesus to the Orca people. But then, amazingly, Elizabeth, his widow, after his death, tried again to reach the people who'd killed her husband with the message of Jesus. And afterwards, she wrote a book about it, and guess what she called the book? Psalm 91, In the Shadow of the Almighty. All around the world, people thought she was bonkers and that he was bonkers. But the title of the book, okay, absolutely no mistake at all, because Elizabeth Elliot knew that the safe place of God's people is not a safe place from suffering and death and harm in this life, but ultimate security in the life to come. Satan was wrong. Did God rescue Jesus from the pain of the cross? No. Moreover, Jesus, of course, tells his followers to expect trouble in this world. And so Psalm 91, can you see, it's not a promise of freedom from harm, but it is a promise this morning to us, a precious promise of safety in the midst of the danger. Just have a look at sentence 15 of Psalm 91. Do you see what it says? I will be with him. Where will he be with him? In trouble. Okay, it doesn't guarantee pain-free travel in this world. It assumes trouble, right? But a promise of a God who is with us in that, in the trouble, and a successful arrival to life in heaven with him. This is how Elizabeth Elliot put it. I haven't got the quote on the screen. She says this: God does not promise a safe journey through this life, Elizabeth Elliot, but he promises a safe arrival in the life to come. We often talk, don't we, about the green cross code with our children. This is how you stay safe on the roads. Psalm 91 is the green cross code of life. There is a sovereign Lord. There is a Most High, one who is above all of these fears, and in him and him alone is security to be found. If you're looking in on Christian things this morning, and we love having people with us investigating the Christian faith, if you're looking in on things, the green cross code of life is to make the Most High your dwelling place by putting your trust in Jesus. Why would you trust anything else? Family or career, money, fitness, great blessings, rubbish gods. Why would you put your trust in anything else? And if you are someone here this morning who is following Jesus, well, this psalm, I think, ought to make us fearless in our following of him. If you believe Psalm 91, okay, you are invincible and you are indestructible. And invincible, indestructible people are fearless people. This is why Jim Elliot was able to go to the Orca people. This is why Christians around the world take enormous risks in their following of Jesus. This is why you can give yourself this year to what is good and right and what is true. This is why it's never a bad New Year's resolution for a Christian to say, actually, this year, I'm invincible. So I'm going to be a bit bolder and a bit braver in my following of Jesus. Psalm 91, it was true of Jesus. He died, but where did he die? In the shadow of the Almighty. And because of Jesus and because of all that he did, we're going to remember that now, Psalm 91, it's wonderfully, it's profoundly, it is deeply true. It can be deeply true for every single one of us this morning. Okay, I'm going to suggest we finish by praying Psalm 91 together. So let's get on our feet. Please stand, everyone. Bring Psalm 91 with you. If you can stand, don't worry if you can't, but if you can stand, please stand. Bring Psalm 91 with you. We're going to pray this all together, and then I'll say amen at the end. Okay, so Psalm 91, let's say together, verse 1. Whoever dwells in the shadow of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely He will save you from the foulest snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. If you say, the Lord is my refuge, and you make the Most High your dwelling, no harm will overtake you, no disaster will come near your tent. For He will command His angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent. Because He loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue Him. I will protect Him, for He acknowledges my name. He will keep on my knee, and I will answer Him. I will be with Him in trouble. I will deliver Him and honor Him with long life. I will satisfy Him and show my salvation. Amen. Please do sit down there. Brilliant. And we come now